All right, so now we are recording. And again, my name is Grace Sinopoli, and my co-panelists. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Agata Williams, and I am one of the dietitians here at Food and Friends as well, and I will be working behind the scenes today.
Thank you so much. And thanks again, everyone. So glad you could be here. So before we get started with our main topic today, the presentation on diabetes and nutrition, I just wanted to share some information with you. We recently launched a new website at Food and Friends. It's our same website, foodandfriends.org, but it's been revamped and updated with a lot of new information, and it's really designed to be providing information that's useful to our clients. So I just wanted to quickly share my screen and go over some information from the website, so that if you are a Food and Friends client, or if you're watching this and you're interested in learning more about Food and Friends, you'll know where you can access that information. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, are you seeing the screen? Wonderful. So this is the home page for our new website, foodandfriends.org. Pretty easy to remember. And as you scroll down this main page, you'll see there's quite a lot of information about our organization. There's another one of our dietitians, Ashley, on the right, getting to know more members of our team, and some information about the work that we do, and who we serve, and history, and a lot of other things if you're interested in learning more about Food and Friends, whether or not you already are a client. But the main thing I wanted to focus on can be found under this Services tab. Here at the top, you hover over Services and then click on Current Clients. And there is information here that's all designed to be useful to our current clients. So we have information about our home delivered meals program, as well as our groceries to go program. Those are our two main food delivery programs. Then for your reference, there are menus here for each of those programs, and the different meal plans within those programs. So these menus, you can click on them and print them, or have them to reference at home or on the go. And another thing to note, there's reheating instructions here for the foods that you receive from Food and Friends. There's also information about our nutrition services team, our dietitians, Becca, Agata, Ashley, and myself, Grace. Our phone numbers and email addresses are here, so you can reach out and get a hold of us. And some more information here about what a registered dietitian can do and how we can help support you during your time as a client with Food and Friends. There's also some helpful information about our delivery policies, alternative delivery options. It really answers to a lot of questions that you might have if you are a Food and Friends client, or may want to just refer to. And you're always welcome as well to contact us by phone. You can contact your dietitian. You can contact our client services line, which is 202-269-6820. I'll put that in the chat as well. And that's a good kind of go-to number to reach out to if you have any questions about Food and Friends. So we're really excited about the new website, and hope that you might find it useful. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, we definitely welcome that as well. And thanks for Agata for sharing that information. So that's the website, and in a moment I'll start our main presentation for the day. And just wanted to let you know, even though we can't see or hear you, we definitely encourage you to interact and get involved in the presentation. If you have any questions at any point throughout the presentation, there is a Q&A box and a chat box as well. You're welcome to insert any comments, questions there. Agata will be monitoring that, and then we will also have some time reserved towards the end of our hour together for specifically for Q&A. All right. Just one moment, please. And yeah, as I think I said a few times, but I really appreciate those of you that are here watching live, and those of you that may be watching the recording after the fact. We will also be recording this and sending out the recording to everyone that registered. So if you want to come back and refer to it later, you'll have that option. And you know, I know we might all be coming from different places. Some of us are Food and Friends clients, some may not be. Some of you may have diabetes or work with individuals with diabetes, or someone that you love or care for has diabetes. But something brought you here today that you're interested in this topic. So I really hope that in this time that we have together, you'll find some information that is interesting or new to you. Some might be a review, some might be totally new. But keeping that in mind, I'll start the presentation. Okay. All right, do we have the slides visible? Excellent, excellent. Well, again, our topic today will be an overview of diabetes, nutrition, and kind of a back to basics approach. So why do we want to focus on diabetes today? Diabetes is a disease that is very common. It affects millions of people in the US and around the world. So if you are affected by diabetes, you're definitely not alone in that. Something that a lot of people experience. And it's also something that is very complex. It's a chronic illness. It tends to change and evolve over time, and it's influenced by many different factors. The good news is there's a lot that we know about diabetes. There's a lot of information and resources out there, and there's a lot that you can do to help manage diabetes and live well with diabetes. But it also can certainly be challenging and overwhelming, and many people with diabetes sometimes become discouraged or burnt out with managing diabetes. And there also is misinformation out there, which is important to be aware of. That there's a lot of good information, a lot of not so accurate information. And if there's ever anything that you learn about somewhere that you're unsure about, people like dietitians or your doctor, other members of your healthcare team are great people to talk that over with and help you sort through all the information that's out there, because it can be a lot to navigate, but we're definitely here to support you. And I hope that after this webinar, you'll feel encouraged and empowered and learn something new about diabetes. Another reason that it's so important to learn about managing diabetes is that managing diabetes well and doing things to live healthfully with diabetes can really help people with diabetes to feel better in your day-to-day life in the short term, as well as over the long term help to prevent complications of diabetes that can really affect your life, such as some things we'll talk about a little bit more later, but there's many different possible complications of diabetes, but you can really reduce the risk for many of these complications by taking, small actions in the day-to-day to help manage diabetes. And again, I mentioned at the beginning, this is a kind of a back to basics approach. And I also think let's zoom out and look at the big picture. Sometimes with diabetes, again, there's so much information out there, and it can be really easy to get caught up in lots of little details and very specific questions or things. And that is certainly important too. There's a lot to focus on, but I think it's really important to zoom out and look at the big picture. It's not about perfection, it's about practice and what you're doing most often over the long term. And it's about overall eating patterns, overall patterns of lifestyle, and those are things we'll talk more about. But let's keep in mind that big picture. So what is diabetes? And again, this might be review for some folks, or it might be something that's new. And as I mentioned before, diabetes is a really complex illness. And there's actually several different types of diabetes. The most commonly known ones are type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. There's also gestational diabetes, and there's actually several other different types of diabetes that are continue to be researched and better understood. But the most common type of diabetes, and the one that we'll be primarily focusing on today, is type 2 diabetes, which is a type of diabetes where the body becomes insulin resistant over time, which means that insulin, which is a hormone that's produced by the pancreas, that hormone is really important to our body's function because, as you see in this illustration here, insulin allows glucose to move from the blood into the cells and be used for energy. All of the cells in our body use glucose for energy. That's why we have blood glucose. And when someone is insulin resistant, that insulin isn't able to do its job of letting the glucose into the cells. So instead, that glucose builds up in the blood. It's not able to be used by the cells for energy. And when it's built up in the blood, it can cause harm both in the short term and the long term. And I know this is something that is pretty complex. So especially as again, anytime throughout the presentation, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share those. But especially if anyone has any questions about this, like what is diabetes or what is insulin, things like that, please feel free to share those. We'd be happy to explain further during the Q&A portion. And as I was mentioning, the glucose remains in the blood and it's not able to be used for energy. And that damage over time, that can occur with the blood vessels and the nerves as that blood glucose is being carried throughout the body. And it often starts in the smallest blood vessels, which are found in our eyes, ears, stomach, kidneys, nerves in the hands and feet. So that's why diabetes can lead to diabetic neuropathy or numbness of the hands and feet. That's why it's really important to take good care of your feet if you have diabetes. Similar, eyes have very small blood vessels that can be easily affected by too high of blood sugar. And so that's why diabetes can lead to vision changes. And again, all of these are affected by many different factors. So yeah, what are some factors that affect blood glucose? What are some things that come to mind? I'll let you think about it for a moment while I take a sip of water. And I think, yeah, I'll let you think about it. And if there's anything that comes to mind for you, feel free to share it in the chat. But yeah, there are many different factors that affect blood glucose. And I think often some of the most common ones that come to mind for folks are like food, exercise, medications, and certainly those are some of the big ones. And often I think that food is the one that we most often tend to think of first, of what affects blood glucose. But did you know that there are at least 42 different factors that can affect blood glucose? And I think I share this, not to be an overwhelming slide with tons of information on it. You don't need to memorize this, but I share this because nutrition is a really important piece of the puzzle, and that's something we're going to be focusing on today. Even that, it can be complex. But there's so many other pieces of the puzzle, and I think sometimes folks with diabetes, if you're having trouble with your blood sugar, immediately the thought is, oh, I must have eaten the wrong thing. I must have done something wrong with my eating. But and again, nutrition is something to consider, but there are many different factors as well. And again, zooming out, looking at the big picture, maybe considering, is there something else that could be affecting my blood sugar? Am I in a time of a lot of stress? Am I in a time of too little sleep? Am I perhaps dehydrated? All of these are good things to keep in mind. And with all of that said, what can we do about all of this? And our focus today will be on nutrition and other factors that are considered lifestyle factors, meaning that they're factors that can be changed and are somewhat within your control. And I want to acknowledge that a lot of these factors, they are affected by things outside of your control, things like influence of family, work schedule, costs of food, other obligations. And those challenges are certainly real and are barriers, but it's good to reflect on what are things that you can control, what are some small changes that you can make within your circumstances, and believe that you can make those changes, and dietitians and others are here to support you to care for yourself and your health. So one of the most important things that you can do to help manage your diabetes is monitoring blood glucose regularly. Knowledge really is power when it comes to your blood glucose. If you know what's going on with your blood glucose, you have the first and really important step towards managing it. If you're monitoring your blood glucose consistently, it can help you to notice trends, notice how different things might be affecting your blood glucose, and really help you tune in to those individual factors of what's going on with you. It can help you to better communicate with your healthcare providers so that they can do things like manage your medications to best help meet your needs. And it can help empower you with that information too. The blood glucose goals, the goal range of what you're aiming for your blood glucose to be and how often to check, those can really vary from person to person. Sometimes insurance dictates how many test strips you can get covered. On the other hand, some people have continuous glucose monitors. There's really a range. And if you're not sure, definitely ask any questions that you have of whichever healthcare provider helps you manage your diabetes, whether that's your primary care physician, an endocrinologist. They should help you make sure that you know the plan to monitor your blood glucose. And this is mostly talking about monitoring your blood glucose day to day, but being aware of the A1C blood test, which measures an average over time, that's an important factor to be aware of too. And I just wanted to touch on some symptoms of high and low blood sugar. I think for anyone with diabetes or working with or caring for someone with diabetes, it's really important to be aware of these symptoms. These symptoms can vary from person to person, but each individual person tends to have similar symptoms over time. So for example, Bob might feel shaky and jittery when his blood sugar is low. And Diane might feel blurred vision and a headache when her blood sugar is low. Those can vary from person to person, but those individuals most often have similar symptoms each time and can kind of become familiar over time. So really important to tune into how you're feeling each day and throughout the day, and to be aware of these symptoms, and then of what can be done if you are experiencing those symptoms. Um, and it's important to, if at all possible, to check the blood sugar if you're having these symptoms so that you know if the blood sugar is low or high. Um, Medications are another important piece of the puzzle when managing diabetes. Any medications that have been prescribed to you by your healthcare provider, it's really important to take medications consistently, and as directed. And doing that consistently over the time is one of the best things that you can do to have a good foundation for managing your diabetes. Now, shifting gears a little bit into food and nutrition. So the big topic that people might be wondering about, carbohydrates or carbs. What are carbohydrates? Why are they important? What is the relationship between carbohydrates and diabetes? This is definitely something that we get so many questions about. There's a lot of uncertainty, and sometimes the answers to some of these questions can be really complex. But again, we're taking a back to basics approach today. And so I'll first break it down. What are carbohydrates? So in the food that we eat, there is different types of nutrients. There is micronutrients, which are the vitamins and minerals, and those are called micronutrients because we need them. They're very important, but the amounts that we need are relatively small. They're measured in milligrams or micrograms, very small amounts. On the other hand, there are macronutrients, which include fat, carbohydrates, and protein. And those are called macronutrients because we need them in relatively larger amounts, measured in grams. And those are what all of those are things that you can see. For example, you might have seen on a nutrition facts label on various types of foods. But those are the differences between those micro and macronutrients. And again, the three macronutrients are fat, carbohydrates, and protein. And all three of those macronutrients are very important. They play different roles in our body. And oftentimes with changes in like diet trends, will be kind of seems like one of them is in or out of fashion, but truly all three of those, fat, carbohydrates, and protein are very important to have in balanced amounts in your diet. And we'll talk more about that. And carbohydrates specifically are a nutrient that provides energy to our body. It gets broken down after it is digested and absorbed. Carbohydrates get broken down into glucose and can be used for that blood glucose, for that energy, which again, we don't want it to be too low or too high, but it is very important to have that energy from carbohydrates and to have that blood glucose. Even just our brain uses a pretty significant of carbohydrates each day, and having those throughout the day can help us to be energized, especially when they're balanced with other nutrients. And we'll talk more about how to find that balance. All that to say, it is important to be mindful and aware of carbohydrates with diabetes, because it's not that carbohydrates are bad or need to be completely avoided, but they are the nutrient that affects blood sugar the most, and has the closest relationship with blood sugar. So it is important to educate ourselves a bit about carbohydrates, about what foods are sources of carbohydrates, keeping good portion sizes of those foods, and we'll talk about some ways to do that. Okay, so a great way to make sure that you're incorporating all of these important nutrients is to build balanced meals. And I have 2 slides here that I'll kind of go back and forth between. There's many different ways to do this. There's not one exactly right way to do this. But here we have one that's called the Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat with Diabetes plate. We have the Harvard Healthy Eating plate. And then on this next slide, we have a few different plate models using different cultural foods. There is like this is a healthy Mexican plate, healthy West African plate, and this can really incorporate foods from all different cultures, from different food preferences. And as you can see, that there's some similarities and differences between these different models, but the overarching concept is that you're including foods from different food groups and in balanced amounts in ways that will help balance blood sugar and provide all the nutrition that you need. So just to use this diabetes plate as an example, all of the food groups that are in this top right corner of the diabetes plate are the foods that are high in carbohydrates. So that includes grains, and that by grains, I mean any kind of breads, pasta, rice, and this is whole or white grains. All of these are foods that are high in carbohydrates and can be part of a balanced meal, but in a good proportion. And it is best to try to choose whole grains over white grains when possible, because they're higher in fiber, which slows down the absorption of the carbohydrates and helps keep your blood sugar more stable. This also includes starchy vegetables, which are things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, peas, and corn, and those are all nutritious foods. They have a lot of vitamins and minerals, but they are high in carbohydrates. So again, good to keep them in good proportions to the other foods. Most dairy products, if you include dairy products in your diet, those are a good source of a lot of nutrients, but again, they are high in carbohydrates, such as lactose, which is the naturally occurring sugar in dairy products. And then fruit is also very nutritious. Fruit is also a carbohydrate source, and sometimes people with diabetes have heard that they should avoid fruit or only eat like a very limited certain types of fruit, but really all fruits are a good source of a lot of nutrients, a good source of fiber, vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients as well, and can certainly fit into this balanced plate and balanced eating overall, with or without diabetes. So that's the top right corner. Those are the foods that are high in carbohydrates and should be kind of making up they have an important place in the meal, but it's a smaller portion. It's a smaller percentage of the meal. Then on the bottom right corner, you have protein. And what we most often think of when we think of protein are any kind of meat, fish, poultry, and those are really good protein sources. There's a lot of other foods that are good protein sources as well. Along with being a source of carbohydrates, dairy is a good protein source. Eggs are a good protein source. And then there's a lot of non-animal foods that are good sources of protein too, such as beans and legumes, nuts and seeds. Whole grains have they're not super high in protein, but they have a bit of protein. And a lot of some of those protein sources also are carbohydrate sources. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. But they make up an important place on your plate too. And then a big concept to keep in mind is making low carbohydrate vegetables, which includes most vegetables other than those ones that I mentioned earlier under the starchy vegetables. That includes most vegetables. And when you're having those make up a significant percentage of the meal, that has so many benefits. They're so high in lots of different vitamins and minerals and other nutrients. They're high in fiber, which again helps slow down the absorption of the carbohydrates. It helps keep you full. It helps you be more satisfied. Not to mention that low carb, the vegetables and all of these foods can be cooked and prepared in a lot of delicious ways. Eating well for diabetes definitely doesn't have to mean only eating plain, boring, bland food. It can be really delicious too. So that's a bit of an overview of this plate model. And it's not to say every meal has to perfectly fit one of this plate model, but it's a guideline to help when you're maybe looking at a meal that you are selecting, whether it's at home or eating out or at a family member or friend's house, maybe just taking a quick minute to pause and look at your plate and see, is this well balanced? Am I including a variety of food groups? And how will this help me with my goals around my blood sugar and healthy eating? Similar concept applies for snacks as well, as far as building that balance. So if you're having a snack, preparing a source of carbohydrates, a couple examples here being crackers or an apple, and pairing that with a source of protein, fiber, and or healthy fat. So the cheese here is a good source of protein. It has some fat as well, which gives it some staying power, helps it be absorbed more slowly, and it makes it very satisfying. And peanut butter as well is a good source of healthy fats, and some fiber and protein accompanies well with the apple. And those are just two examples, but the possibilities are endless there as far as building balanced snacks. And having snacks between meals with diabetes is a great way to help keep the blood sugar stable and keep from getting too hungry between meals. I'm sure we've all had the feeling of being a little bit hangry or not being our best self when we've gone too long without eating. And that can be for a lot of reasons, but our body just, needs that nutrition, needs fuel consistently throughout the day to function at its best, to feel our best, and including balanced snacks, that can be a good way to add some more nutrition, to incorporate some fruits and vegetables or other nutritious foods that you want to include in your eating. And another thing to keep in mind, along with the balance, is consistency is key. And that consistency is throughout the day and from day to day. And I'll explain more about that. And this timeline here that you see on the screen, it's just one example. This can vary a lot based on an individual's routine schedule, when you wake up and when you go to sleep, and yeah, just what your day looks like. But this is an example of what that can look like, those consistent meals and snacks throughout the day. And if your eating pattern is very inconsistent, maybe you tend to not eat until much later in the day, or maybe you have one big meal at one time of day and don't have much at another time, or maybe at one day you're eating a meal that is super low in carbohydrates, and the next day you're eating a meal that's really high in carbohydrates. When you have those, it's normal for there to be some variation, but when you have those big inconsistencies either throughout the day or from day to day, your body really doesn't know what to expect, and it makes it hard for your body to keep your blood sugar stable. And so instead of your blood sugar, rising and falling a bit, but staying in a pretty good range, that inconsistency is what can often cause blood sugar to really get high, get low, and be a little bit more all over the place. So this is something that it seems very simple it can be easier said than done for sure, but it's a really good kind of big picture concept to keep in mind is that consistency. And it's something that when it's an established habit over time, it gets a little bit easier. While still totally understanding that life happens, and sometimes things come up where it's hard to do this, but if you're doing this most of the time, it's really going to be beneficial for your blood sugar and for how you feel overall. Something that can help with that consistency is planning ahead. And again, sometimes life happens, unexpected things come up. It's again about practice, not perfection. But some practical things that can help you with planning ahead to get that consistency is things like having snacks that you can bring on the go with you, that are well balanced, that you can just keep in your pocket or in your bag when you're on the go. Cooking foods or preparing part of a meal, like for example, chopping up your vegetables for the week or for a few days at a time, or cooking a batch of a whole grain like brown rice, doing some of those bigger tasks on the days and times when you have the most time or energy to do those, and thinking at least a couple days in advance so that you have things ready to go, so that you're not caught unprepared, and that you can help support that consistency for yourself. Another thing to keep in mind is mindful eating throughout the day, and as you're eating, checking in with your hunger and fullness cues. There's so many reasons why often we are kind of out of touch with our hunger and fullness. We're born with this sense of when we're hungry and when we're full, but there's a lot of different external signals that can make it hard to connect with that. And so taking that time to check in, how hungry am I? Eating something when you're a little bit hungry, but not so hungry that you feel ravenous and out of control around food. And then on the other side, as you're eating, checking in with your fullness and, you know, maybe pausing during a meal and eating until that point where you feel satisfied and full, but not overfull, where maybe you don't feel well after the meal. That's another thing where it's about practice, not perfection. Another piece of mindful eating is as you sit down to a meal or snack, noticing and savoring like the colors, aromas, texture, flavor of foods, really trying to pay attention, and be present with the experience of eating. It's often not realistic to do that perfectly every meal, but even taking just a minute or two at the beginning of a meal, to really take in all of those senses, that can really make your meal more satisfying and help you be in touch with the hunger and fullness. And along with all of this, just kind of tuning in, paying attention to how you feel before and after eating. One of the best things that you can do for blood sugar and so many other benefits is related to not what you're eating, but what you're drinking. Staying well hydrated is really beneficial for your blood sugar and helping prevent high blood sugar. I often say it might sound kind of weird, but urine color is a really good thing to keep an eye on for hydration. If your urine is very light yellow, that's a sign you're well hydrated. But if your urine is more of a medium or darker yellow, that could be a sign to increase the fluids a bit more. And things like keeping water with you when you're on the go, or even just moving around within your house so that it's always available to you, and taking small sips frequently throughout the day can be a lot easier and help you stay hydrated better than feeling like, oh, I have to drink this huge jug of water all in one sitting. It's more about increasing fluids in small amounts regularly over the course of the day. Additionally, if you drink beverages that are high in sugar, like soda or juices, other beverages that are sweetened with sugar, limiting or avoiding those is really going to help with blood sugar management. Those sweetened beverages are a really concentrated source of sugar that our body absorbs so quickly, and they can increase blood sugar really dramatically. And a lot of people will see a lot of benefit to their blood sugar just from reducing sugar sweetened beverages. Um, and so keep an eye on maybe the nutrition labels on beverages, because these days there's a lot of things that have artificial sweeteners. There's things that have all different kinds of sweeteners. So that's another topic where it can, we can really get into the details. But being aware of what the actual sugar content in the beverage is, and trying to choose water or other beverages that are free of sugar whenever possible, is kind of the big picture thing to keep in mind. Sleep is another factor that affects blood sugar. Too little sleep can increase your blood sugar, or inconsistent sleep can interfere with your body finding those rhythms to help keep your blood sugar stable. And sleep is something that unfortunately a lot of people have challenges with for various reasons. So if you're reflecting and feeling like sleep is something that you can work on, it can be challenging, but there's a lot of different big and small things that can be done to help with sleep. Definitely something to maybe talk with your doctor about if it's something that's really a struggle for you, or thinking about small things that can be done with your routine or your sleeping environment to help you get a better and more regular sleep. Movement and exercise and physical activity are also really beneficial for so many aspects of our overall health, and especially on this topic for our blood sugar. I always say the best kind of exercise is something that you enjoy and can do regularly. And everyone has different physical abilities. Everyone has different things that are available to them. But always when it comes to movement and exercise, anything is better than nothing, or a little bit more is better than a little bit less. And gradually increasing and doing things consistently over time can really help in a lot of ways. If possible, it's great to get a few different types of activity. Some activity that is like cardiovascular or aerobic activity, like walking, or anything else that's kind of moving around for a period of time at a medium or lower intensity, or a more vigorous intensity. Maybe you like running or biking, or dancing. Even dancing around the house can be a great type of physical activity. But along with those kind of cardiovascular activities, if at all possible, it's really beneficial to have some form of strength training or resistance training. That is great for your muscles and bones and a lot of other aspects of your health, especially for anyone at any stage of life, but especially getting older or middle age. That's a great time to incorporate strength training if it's not something that's already a part of your routine. And stretching has a lot of benefits too for stress reduction, as well as mobility, helping prevent injuries. So incorporating a variety of aerobic activity, strength training or resistance activity, and stretching whenever possible, that can help you kind of build some habits around movement and exercise to help best support you in a well-rounded way. Getting close to kind of wrapping up our main presentation here, with all of these things that we've talked about today, how can Food and Friends help? So if you're already a client with Food and Friends, you are probably familiar with the food that we deliver. We have the home delivered meals or the groceries to go program, and the meal plans and menus for those programs are designed by our team of dietitians and chefs. And we keep all of these things in mind, all of these recommendations, while we're planning what to send. And we also keep in mind wanting to send food that is tasty and enjoyable too. We also offer individual counseling to our clients from our dietitians, and we can provide that over the phone or by Zoom. We can help clients find other resources, like maybe resources for exercise in your community, or other resources to help you with things that you're looking for. And just overall, living well with diabetes, it requires support. You're not alone, and we can help offer that support to help you. So those are some things to keep in mind if you are a Food and Friends client. If you're not a Food and Friends client, but are interested in learning more, or you might be eligible and interested in receiving food, talk to your healthcare provider and about potentially a referral to Food and Friends. And that information is all available on our website, as we showed the website at the beginning. We didn't show the part about the referral, but that is on the website as well. And again, that website is foodandfriends.org. And if you're interested in some of these things, but you're not eligible for Food and Friends at this time, maybe asking your doctor for a referral to a registered dietitian for some of that additional counseling and support. Just wanted to quickly share a few other resources. There's many resources out there. There's lots of books. These are a couple of books that I really like and would recommend. You can check your local library or other resources to find these, and they're both a relatively low price point, but there are many other books out there too, as well as cookbooks to help you with recipes or inspiration around food. There is a podcast, if anyone listens to podcasts or is interested in trying podcasts. This is a podcast called Type 2 and You with Meg, and that's available on like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any of the places where podcasts are commonly found. She's a dietitian that provides a lot of really great information about type 2 diabetes. There's many websites as well that have some great information. And with all of these types of things like books, podcasts, websites, just make sure to be mindful of where the information is coming from, making sure it's a reliable source. But some really good sources are the American Diabetes Association, Diatribe, which is another nonprofit organization. That's where I got the 42 factors that affect blood glucose that was shown earlier in the presentation. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has a great variety of nutrition information, and that's our professional association of dietitians. So they also have information about how you can find a dietitian near you if that's something you're looking for. And this wasn't really in the scope of this presentation today, but many people with diabetes also have kidney disease. And so I just wanted to mention, if anyone has kidney disease, DaVita or davita.org has a lot of really great, wonderful nutrition information for people who have kidney disease. So all coming together now. What questions do you have? I see we have some questions in the chat and some things in the Q&A. And I just wanted to mention we will be sending out the recording of the presentation after this to everyone who is registered. And we can send the slides as well so that you can have those to refer to.
Okay. Grace, I have a couple questions that I think we can ask during the Q&A section. But one of the things, if you would be so kind to go back to slide 11, which was the slide about hyper and hypo.
Sure.
I know that there were some participants that were taking notes, and there was a request to show that slide a little bit for a little bit longer. So as we answer the questions, maybe you can share.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
At least for a moment.
Yeah, I'm glad that was helpful.
Yeah, there was There was also a question about the titles of the books, and I started putting them into the chat. So if you want that, by all means, the books will be in the chat. Let me just get Alice.
Yes, I see that in the chat. Yeah, the first one was Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat, which is by Michelle May, who is a medical doctor, and Migret Fletcher, who's a registered dietitian. And the second is Pre-Diabetes Diet and Action Plan. That one is more focused on pre-diabetes specifically, but also relevant to people with diabetes. And that's by Alice Figueroa, who is a registered dietitian. And yes, the podcast, Type 2 and You, and then those websites, and yes, I'll definitely plan to send the slides to all of you so that you have those to look over at your convenience too.
That was also one of the questions. I wasn't 100% sure. Regarding the session, what I am also going to do, I am going to put in the chat box the link to the survey. If you guys would be so kind to complete the survey at the end, we would really appreciate it. And Grace, there were a few questions. The first one was, can I drink water with lemon every day?
That's a great question. Yes, it's totally safe to drink water with lemon every day. And that is a great way of incorporating some more water in your life. I'm glad that someone brought that up, because I meant to mention that infused water, like water with lemon or cucumber, or really there are countless different fruits and some vegetables that you can use to make infused water by simply soaking them in water, either in the fridge overnight or just for a couple of hours. It really adds a nice flavor to water. And then you can still eat the fruit afterwards. I know you probably wouldn't want to eat the lemon straight up, but it could be used in cooking, and you get a little bit of nutrition from those fruits and or vegetables. And yes, it's definitely safe to drink lemon water every day or regularly.
Another question, it was a little maybe unclear, but I understand that the question was specifically about belly fat. Why too much belly fat and how to work on this?
That's a great question. That is a little bit outside of the focus of this presentation today. If you are, but I'll say if you are a Food and Friends client and you are wanting to talk about this more in detail, definitely reach out to your dietitian. But I'll answer that because I think I'm familiar with what you're asking about. There is research showing that fat that is around our kind of midsection and maybe close to some of our internal organs, that is particularly associated with some negative health outcomes. That specific factor, it's something that's, there's things that we can do to influence it, but it's not easily within our control. So it's something that, it's interesting to be aware of that research, but I think for us as individuals trying to live a healthy life, the most important thing to focus on is what are the healthy habits I want to do that can benefit my health, kind of regardless of some of those factors that are harder to control. And so some of those things like, nutrition choices, physical activity, sleep, and managing stress, all of those things are really beneficial to focus on, kind of regardless of like the number on the scale or things like belly fat. Those things are all going to have their benefits. So it's a good question. It's a complicated question, but thanks for bringing that up, and I hope that answer helps a little.
We can maybe give it a minute. That's basically all when it comes to questions so far.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, we're almost at 2:58, so coming closer to the end of our hour. And I will go to kind of the last slide. But if there's any last minute questions, please feel free to share those in the chat. I know there was some feedback about going through the some of these resources too quickly. I was just wanting to get to our Q&A portion and have time for that, but hope it was helpful to share those in the chat, and then we will send out this information so that you can look at it and take any time that you would like to look at those slides. And we definitely want to hear from you. As Agata mentioned and put the link in the chat, we have a survey that that we would love to have you participate in. It's very quick and easy, and will really help us with planning future webinars. We want to hear about your thoughts, if this was helpful, what you learned, any suggestions that you might have for things to do differently. We really want to hear anything that you would like to share. So please take a look at that survey. You could even do it right now, and then you don't have to, you can cross it off your to-do list. But that's there for you to share your feedback. Again, Food and Friends clients, you're always welcome to contact your Food and Friends dietitian anytime with any questions that you have about nutrition, especially about your individual needs. The information we were talking about today is pretty broad, and so you may have different needs as an individual, and those are a great thing to talk about one-on-one with a dietitian. And anyone who's watching, if you have any questions, any feedback, any comments you'd like to share outside of the survey, you're welcome to email our team anytime, and that's at nutrition@foodandfriends.org, as you can see here. And for all of you that are here today, we have your email addresses from when you registered, so we will email the information to you. And just wanted to mention, this is part of an ongoing nutrition education series. We have several more topics coming up over the next several months, and we hope that you'll join us or spread the word to someone you know who might be interested, and hope to see you again soon. And thanks for sharing this time with us. All right, well, thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and end the webinar. But again, we do want to hear from you, any comments, any feedback, any questions. So please feel free to reach out. All right, thanks everyone, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, goodbye.